Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the mixed poker game, Archie. It has become very popular in the past 5 to 7 years and is often a mainstay in the poker mixed games in Las Vegas and some other places. So if you're going to be a mixed game player, then you need to know how to play Archie. And we're going to assume that you're going to get some valuable information out of this video today. So with that assumption in mind, go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Let's hit that alert bell as well so that you can be notified when any new videos come out. And with that, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So what is Archie? Well, first, it is a triple draw game. So it's very similar to Ace to 5. In the sense that you're going to have 3 chances or draws to make your hand after you're dealt cards. So that's the first thing. Archie is a triple draw game. Second, Archie is a split pot game. So similar to the other videos we talked about, such as Badesi or Badusi, that means there's going to be actually 2 winners for every hand, assuming that the hand is actually made. So on the low side of the hand, you're going to have Ace to 5. So the best Ace to 5 hand is going to win the low half of the pot in Archie. But on the high side, it's actually going to be the best normally high poker hand. So the nuts in Ace to 5, as we know, because you've watched the Ace to 5 triple draw video, is going to be Ace 2, 3, 4, 5. But on the high side, just like a normal poker game, the best hand is going to be a royal flush. So 10, Jack, Queen, King, Ace of the same suit. So those are the 2 best possible hands, or the nuts in Archie. But what makes Archie unique is it has what is called a double qualifier, meaning that you have to qualify for both the low and the high hands. On the low side, you're probably familiar with the qualifier. That's going to be an 8 low or better. So that's normally what you see in like Omaha 8 or better, or in Stud 8 or better. It's the same in Archie. You have to have a low ball hand that is lower than 8 high. What's unique is the high qualifier is also in play in Archie, meaning if you're going to go for the high side of the pot, you normally have to have at least a pair of 9s. So a pair of 9s is going to be the minimum qualifier in order to win the high side of the pot. And that is the basic rules for playing Archie. One thing that does come up, although it doesn't come up that often, but it did happen to me once while playing in Las Vegas, is what if nobody qualifies? So in other words, you got a couple people after the third draw and they both missed their hands. So let's say someone was going for 8 low and they missed, or they might have been going for a high and they missed. And the other opponent was going for, let's say, a flush and they missed. Well, now no one has a low hand and no one has a high hand. So the money is actually divided among the players remaining in the hand at the end. So that's what happens when neither side or neither opponent actually qualifies for the low or the high. So also similar to Ace to 5 or other triple draw games, a full game is going to be considered 6-handed. You can obviously play a little bit fuller with 7 or 8-handed, although I don't recommend 8-handed. And you can also play less than 6-handed. Also, you're going to be doing the same format as Ace to 5 or Deuce to 7 in terms of blind structure. You'll have a small blind and a big blind. And as always, position matters. And also in low ball mixed game formats, similar to Ace to 5, Deuce to 7, what have you, we're going to be playing fixed limit poker. Let's say you're playing a 10-20 game, you're going to be betting in increments of $10. And on the second draw and third draw, you're going to be betting in increments of $20. So it always doubles on the second and third draw. And that's when the price of poker goes up. So you need to make sure you have a good hand by that point in the process. Now, just because Archie plays like Ace to 5 or Deuce to 7 does not mean that the strategy is the same. Archie is a very exciting game, but it can be quite complex, and you can get into a lot of trouble if you don't adjust your strategy or playing style for the slight variations in how the game plays. So always make sure you study up on what those rule variations are and the strategy adjustments you need to make in order to become a profitable poker player. So what do we want to consider when we're playing Archie? Well, the first thing is, as always, we want to be thinking about position, position, position. So remember, when you're determining what your starting hand selection is going to be, meaning what hands you're going to play after being dealt in, you want to have a tighter range when you are early in position. So the small blind, the big blind, under the gun. And later in position, you can open it up and be a little bit more aggressive, especially if you're on the button. Similarly to other low ball games, you want to be trying to draw smooth when going for the low side of the pot, meaning you want to draw from the bottom up and not from the top down. If you're not familiar with that concept, make sure you check out my other videos on ace to 5 or deuce to 7, because it's important that you understand the concept of drawing smooth if you want to be a profitable low ball poker player. So let's talk about some starting hand selection that you're going to want to consider when playing Archie. And then let's also talk about some of the unique strategies and differentiation points when playing Archie. And then we'll also talk a little bit about statistics and hand examples as we move forward. So what types of hands do you want to play when you're playing Archie? So what's interesting is, because most people, when they play Archie, are coming to the game with familiarity in low ball, they tend to go after low ball hands because they're familiar with how to play ace to 5 or how to play deuce to 7, so they're aiming for a low. But in Archie, you only have a 2.2% chance of being dealt an 8 low or better. But on the high side, you actually have a 27% chance of being dealt a pair of 9s or better. So you might want to consider playing for the high hands a little bit more often. So let's talk about those high hands that you might want to consider starting with in Archie. So the first thing is, having an ace in your hand is very powerful, because an ace can be a good hand on the high side, but it's also a blocker to the wheel and other good low hands. So having an ace is a very powerful card, and if you have one, you might want to consider entering the pot. But you don't want to just start with any pair, although a pair of 9s is a good qualifier. I wouldn't really start with a pair of 9s. I would only start with kings or better as a pair, and you really want to aim for hands like 2 pair to start off with, or 4 to the flush. Those are the type of hands that I would want to start off with. Obviously better than 2 pair, so 3 of a kind is an automatic move forward in the hand situation. But I wouldn't necessarily come into the pot just because you have a pair of 9s or a pair of 10s or jacks or queens. I would start off at least a pair of kings or better, or 4 to the flush, like I said, in order to move forward. I wouldn't really move forward with 4 to the straight. High straight draws can get you into trouble on Archie for various reasons, unless you are going for maybe the ace high straight or king high straight. And even then, I'd be a little cautious, because a straight is not going to win the hand as often as you think it would in 5-card draw. When you have 2 pair, you will fill up over 3 draws 23.9% of the time. So I was actually surprised by that statistic, because you would think a full house is harder to make, but apparently you're going to make one almost a quarter of the time if you start off with 2 pair. As far as flushes are concerned, I would also make sure that you're aiming for at least a king or ace high flush. Lower flushes can become problematic, and you actually will get beat enough times that you probably want to stay away from it. Now on the low side, you're going to play the same strategy that you would in ace to 5, in the sense that you're going to be looking for lower cards, which are obviously better. And so if you have 4 to the wheel, so ace 2, 3, 4, 5, if you have any of those 4 cards, then you should definitely proceed. And also, I would say 4 low cards to a straight, but on the lower side, meaning 2, 3, 4, 5, or ace 2, 4, 5, or etc. You don't really want to be playing hands like 5, 6, 7, 8. You may make a low, but it probably won't be the best low if you've got an 8 low, a 8, 7, 6, 5 low. And on the high side, it probably won't qualify for a hand that's going to win as well. So hands like 5, 6, 7, 8, 4, 5, 6, 7 can get you in a lot of trouble playing Archie. So proceed cautiously with those types of hands, especially on the low side. Now, hands that are extremely powerful are hands that are flush draws with also like 3 low cards. So let's say you had 3, 4, 5 of hearts, extremely powerful hand because you can potentially make not only the steal wheel, which is ace 2, 3, 4, 5 of hearts, but you can make a flush, you can make a low, you can scoop pretty significantly in these types of situations. So anytime you have 3 to the flush with also 3 low cards, that is the type of hand that you definitely want to be aggressive with and raise entering the pot. Now, those are some of the basic strategy concepts that you're going to want to take into consideration when playing Archie. But Archie is unique in a couple of other ways. The main thing is whenever you're playing a draw game, you have to make more difficult decisions than when you're playing, let's say, a stud format game. And the reason why is because in order to draw, that means you're giving up a potential hand that instead you would be able to keep. So let me explain what I mean. Let's say you're dealt 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So you're dealt, or you have 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the second draw. You make a 7, and it's not a flush, but you also didn't make the straight, right? So in stud, if you still had another draw or another card coming on the river, you could still keep the 7 and still make the straight if you got the 6 or if you got the ace. But in draw games, if you want to go for the straight, then you have to throw away the 7, which means now you may not have a low hand at all. So draw games force you to make more difficult decisions than stud games because you actually have to give away a hand that you potentially made in order to get a better hand. Additionally, in Archie, some of the things that make it difficult are you have to decide what type of hand is the person going for. Now, let's say if you were playing just deuce to 7 or ace to 5, well, you know they're going for a low hand. And if you've seen a lot of low cards, then you know that you've taken some of their potential outs to win the hand. But in Archie, they could be going for the high side of the pot, which you're not even in competition for the same cards. Or they could be going for the same, low side that you're going for. So that makes it difficult as well, and you need to try to assess if they're going high or low, and if they've also made their hand, and if it's better than yours. So that makes it a little bit more difficult as well in Archie. Now, let's say that you've just been dealt 5 cards, it's the first draw, and the player throws away 3 cards. So they kept a pair. If they threw away 3 cards and they kept a pair, they're not going for the low. If they are, they're a terrible poker player and you definitely want to stay in this game. They're going for a high hand and they probably have a pair. Well, if you know they have a pair, and let's say you're going for a high hand as well, is their pair better than yours? Those are the types of things you have to think about, which is important why you should start off with kings or aces, right? Because if you start off with kings or aces, they likely don't have a better pair than yours, right? And you're automatically a favorite to win the high side of the pot, statistically speaking. But you need to think about those types of things when you're watching and paying attention to the people you're playing with. Now, let's say they stay with a pair and you finally get to showdown with them and you get to see their hands. Let's say they started their hand off with a pair of 9s. Then you know the type of hand selection they're starting with more often than not. But let's say every time they flip over their cards, they've got a pair of aces in there, then you know you shouldn't be in those hands competing to win the pot with them if you don't start off just as good as they are. So those are the types of things you want to pay attention to when playing Archie. Now, one more situation that is going to come up quite often when you're playing Archie, and it's going to force you to make a decision, is when you are going for a particular hand and you still make a good hand, but it's not the hand you were going for. That's going to actually happen quite often in Archie. And let me give you an example of what I mean. So let's say you have ace, 3, 4, 5 of diamonds in Archie. That is a monster draw, right? You are going for the steel wheel. If you get the deuce of diamonds, you are going to make a straight flush and you're going to scoop the pot. But let's say after the second draw, instead of the deuce of diamonds, you get the king of diamonds. Well, what just happened? You made a flush. Actually, you made the nut flush, right? But you didn't make a low. So now you're in a situation in which you have a great high hand, but you don't have any chance of winning the low side of the pot unless no one qualifies for it. And usually someone qualifies for it. So you're now only playing for half the pot. It wasn't the hand you were going for, but you've got a good one. What do you do? Conversely, let's say instead of the king of diamonds, you make the 6 of clubs, right? So now you've got a low hand, but you don't have a straight, so you don't have the wheel, and you don't have a flush, but you do have a 6 low, 6, 5, 4, deuce, ace, 6, 5, 4, deuce, ace, right? But should you stick with that? Well, the answer in both of those situations and scenarios is yes, you stay pat. Yes, you did not get a good chance to scoop, but you do not want to throw away either the king or the 6 in order to draw for a better hand, especially since you've already had 2 draws. But even if you made it on the first draw, unfortunately, you just have to stay pat and hope that you are good enough to win the high hand or the low hand of the pot. And also, you have to hope that someone else doesn't qualify for the other half of the pot. So that's going to happen very frequently in Archie, where you are going for a particular hand and you end up getting something else that's good, but not what you were going for. So that's the basics of Archie. It's a very fun game. It's an exciting game. Once you start playing it, you're going to want to play it more and more often. However, it can be complex with the double qualifiers. It can be complex with not knowing what types of hands people are going to be going for, and the fact that the statistics vary a little bit compared towards some of the other poker games you might be familiar with playing. But, stick with the basics, stick with the fundamentals, stick with position, position, position. Make sure you are raising and getting people out of hands in order to realize equity. Make sure that you understand the fundamentals, that a pair of aces is going to be a good starting hand, things of that nature, and you will be all right. Watch this video as many times as you need in order to get better, but get out there and practice, and hopefully you will win some massive pots in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. Hopefully you got a lot of value out of this video. If you did, do me a favor, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe, and alert button, and I will see you in the next video.